in fundraising for institutional investors. The challenges of electricity supply in Nigeria are multifaceted. To address these challenges, various solutions have been proposed, including increasing investment in power generation, improving transmission and distribution infrastructure, and of course, promoting energy efficiency and conservation. The government has also implemented several initiatives aimed at addressing challenges facing this sector. Part of it is in introduction of renewable sources, energy sources, and implementation of off-grid solutions, amongst others. Very interesting conversation. We've been on this for some time, but what really is the way forward amidst the recent hike in electricity tariff? I am being joined now by the founder and chief executive officer of Fedicori Limited, Dr. Chukwueloka Umeh, live from Enugu. Thank you so much, Dr. Umeh. It's good to have you on the program this afternoon.
Thank you, Tolu. My pleasure to be here.
Yes. I'd like to start this conversation with issues around grid collapse. Yes, it's interesting we start from that point. According to some reports, it's about 7 times this year in 2024 alone. And we know what this has cost. It's looking like this is something we are continuing to witness going forward in the sector. What are the major issues with regards to this constant collapse that we continue to see?
Well, Tolu, it's almost like you and I have the same conversation all the time. You know, in a situation where the fundamentals of the industry, the power industry, are off, you're going to continue seeing this problem. On April 15th, there was another grid collapse, and that was blamed on a fire at the AFAM 5 plant on the 330 kV line. Once that fire started, it tripped off AFAM 3 and AFAM 6, and from there, other plants started shutting down. Remember, there was a time when a minister said that our problem in Nigeria wasn't generation. Well, it is generation, distribution, transmission, and everything else. Because when a plant trips off and the system operator is not able to react quickly enough to disconnect some load to make sure that the supply of electricity balances out with the load that is online, you're going to have other plants trip off to protect themselves. So that tells you we have outdated equipment all around. It tells you we don't have enough generation capacity. We actually are still talking about 4,000 megawatts in a country of 200 million people, whereas Egypt, with about 111 million people, half our population, generates about 60,000 megawatts. So we're way off. Our generation is way off. Transmission is extremely poor. And of course, distribution doesn't work. Then the system that runs the whole industry is outdated. So you're going to continue seeing this problem. You know, in this year alone, in just 4 months, we've already had 7 collapses. In the 9 years between 2010 and 2019, we had 209 grid collapses. So it's almost like we're competing with ourselves to do worse than we've done before. But we're hopeful. We're hopeful that things will get better, but that takes effort, focused effort.
John, indeed. But let's move very quickly to talk about cost-reflective tariff or service-reflective tariff, like some would say. Finally, federal government, through NERC, has increased tariffs, especially for Band A customers. It's not funny at all, because I am on this band. Now, is this the way to go in a market struggling with less than 4,000 megawatts for a country of 200 million persons?
Well, again, we've talked about this issue before, you know, and I repeat once again that it's a chicken and egg problem. If the tariff is so low, investors are not incentivized to get into the sector. Those that are in the sector already cannot compete because they're not making enough money to invest in infrastructure. But unfortunately, this increase represents more than double an increase in price for Band A customers who are supposed to get over 20 hours of electricity per day. And the difference between the Band A and Band B is over 200%. So you still have people in Band B paying about 60-something naira per kilowatt hour, depending on which state they're in or which disco that they fall into. So it's not funny, just like you said. I mean, if I think about you, for example, Tolu, I know that you're probably spending maybe 40% of your salary on electricity every month. Now, if you consider that there are people who don't make as much as you do, they are probably spending 60, 70, 80% of their salary on electricity. Now, what does that leave for them to pay their rent, to pay for medicine, to pay for school, and God forbid, to have savings? So it's really not funny. However, tariff needs to reflect the investment that people make. But at the same time, there needs to be cushioning effects on the other side of the country for people to be able to afford this. You can't expect someone whose salary has remained the same since 2015 to be paying almost 400, 500% more than they were paying for electricity before. And unfortunately, some of the people that are in Band A aren't the ones that need the electricity for their businesses. You have ladies who have freezers, who depend on freezers to keep their products, stockfish, whatever, frozen, to sell. They can't afford this. So they resort to buying diesel or buying petrol generator fuel. But again, they still can't even afford it. So we are still dealing with the same problem because we haven't addressed the fundamentals.
Addressing this fundamental is something that we need to get into now. I think we're doing a lot of talking, but let me now follow up and say, do you think that even these investors now, for real, are they sincere with consumers? They need to also invest, of course, as we expect governments to also keep investing. At a time like this, we see also lately that the minister just yesterday was out to talk about the privatization process. Now FG is planning to unbundle some discos or even sell some outrightly that are being managed by either AMCON or financial institutions. What do you make of all of these developments?
Over the years after the privatization, we said it, the privatization is not finished. Government still owns a percentage of discos, about 40%. Government still controls the entire TC and Transmission Company of Nigeria. So we're far from finished on the privatization. But beyond the privatization, think about this. You bought an asset, whether it's a Genco or a disco. You need money to make the required investments, okay? Now, if you're borrowing money in today's market at over 30% from a bank, meanwhile, the dollar is running away from you, how do you make the investment? I'll use my own company, for example. I signed a power purchase agreement last year when dollar was 600 naira to the dollar. Today, dollar is 1,300 naira to the dollar. I signed a gas supply agreement at the same time, 600 naira to the dollar. So today, I am effectively paying double for gas. And gas represents over 80% of my cost every month. So I'm paying double for my gas. My tariff that I signed with the client hasn't changed. It's the same. But just to make sure that we're producing, you keep going. So your profits have been completely eroded. This is not solely representative of my business. Other businesses are still growing under the same problem. So for us to start making a real impact in the industry, we need to get proper support from the government. How can I compete with a foreign company that comes in with a loan from their country, whether it's India or China or wherever, at 2%? They're borrowing at 2%. I'm borrowing at 33%. How can I compete? It's not even a conversation. But unfortunately, somebody has to pass this cost down to the consumers who are also groaning under the expense under the current economic situations that we find ourselves in. So it's an emergency situation, and the only way we can get out of this is the government needs to come in and help. The likes of the Bank of Industry, other sovereign wealth fund, they can lend money to companies like ours at single-digit rates so that we can actually compete and start to pass on the savings to the consumer. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, the consumer is the one that's going to suffer it. Now, the consumer can't even go out and buy diesel because diesel in some places sells for over 1,500 a liter. How do you survive? How do you run a business? This is the real challenge that we're all facing.
It's scary. I like to ask you this off the cuff. The issue of liquidity is something that almost all the aspects of the value chain continues to talk about. The generation guys are complaining about gas payments. The disco guys are complaining about tariff, which we think has been partly addressed. The TCN guys will tell you, oh, we can wheel over 7,000 megawatts, but the DISCOs, they are not receiving this from us. Liquidity seems to be the major challenge here. I don't know, Dr. Umeh, can you shed more light on this for us?
So when you speak to a DISCO, they'll tell you that we're collecting money, our collections are improving, but then we are under regulations of how much we can spend on investments for our networks. Who controls that? Who controls that? Federal government controls it through the regulator, through NERC, right? So they have a liquidity problem on their own side. And then you find DISCOs that are owed by government entities themselves. You know, there was some news, I think 2 months ago, where a lot of government parastatals in Abuja, this capital of our beloved country, owes the Abuja DISCO money. How do you operate? And now you're starting to see DISCOs fail. Remember I told you this some years ago, that DISCOs are going to fail and going to be resold. That is happening at an alarming rate. Those that are surviving are still struggling. But beyond them, think about the people in the value chain before you get to DISCOs. The gas generators, or the people producing gas, are not having it easier either. These people have to build infrastructure. They have to invest. Where do they get this money to invest from? Again, they are still playing in the same waters that I spoke about, having to borrow money from local banks at very astronomical interest rates. If they dare go borrow funds from overseas in single digits, they borrow in dollars, they have to, they make money in naira, so they have to convert back to dollars to pay. You know what's happening today? We tried to buy dollars to buy spare parts. You know, in the past 2 days, the dollar rate has gone from 1,100 naira now to 1,400, just 2 days. How do we plan? How do we start to survive? How do we pay people? And there are real people, real families working for us. In my small new company, you know, we have over 20 people working just to produce 4 megawatts of power in our small plant. How do we pay them? These are real problems that we're dealing with. And then you have to go talk to your client to discuss this liquidity problem. They have their own problems too. So unfortunately, you can't kill the client. So it's, you know, it's a chicken and egg problem. Then once again, but I say, you know, Tolu, the solutions are not too far-fetched. Unfortunately, we have a lot of ignorant experts in this country advising the government. And we are reactionary. We do not plan. If you don't plan, you will not succeed. You know, my manager in General Electric at the beginning of my career taught me, he said, you measure twice, you cut once. If you don't measure twice and cut once, you're going to make a mistake, then you have to come back to try and fix it. This is what we continue to do in this country. You know, there are things that can be done and done very quickly. The plant that we built, we commissioned it in November of 2023 for a state government. We built that plant in 5 weeks, from start to finish, developed it in a month, built in 5 weeks. Kudos to our investor, our financial advisor as well. Afri Invest was our financial advisor, and they arranged the funds for us. In record time, in less than a month, they had the funds to us. So Nigerian investors are happy to invest because they understand the terrain and they have hope, just like I have hope and other investors like ourselves have hope. We believe in this country. We believe that this country can be great again, irrespective of who is running the country. We believe we can be great again. But we need the country to also believe in us that are investing in the country. You know, we take assets that we have worked for all our lives and put up on mortgage to stake to invest in businesses here. This is the only way we get things done. But unfortunately, the economic environment is very tough for all of us. And unfortunately, it gets passed to the little people who we are supposed to be protecting. It is a mess, but it is fixable.
All right. Do you think the Electricity Act has any role to play in helping address some of these challenges? We've seen what's happened with, I think, geometrics in Abia, and everyone is talking about what is happening over there. So how do you think this Electricity Act would also help straighten up things?
You know, I give kudos to the government, this present government and the past one, for trying to make changes to the Electricity Act, just to make it easier for private companies to play in the sector. You know, Geometric has been an unfortunate victim of many bad things that happened. But I say one of the strongest men I know in this country is Professor Barton Naji and his supportive wife. Imagine building a plant, borrowing money in dollars, and building a plant when dollar was less than 100 naira to the dollar, and having to wait over 10 years before your plant can run. Most people would have been dead by now out of frustration. He is an extremely strong person, extremely resilient, and I also give kudos to the Abia State Governor, Dr. Alex Oti, who helped to push this through. Models like his should be replicated across the entire country, and the Electricity Act is actually starting to help that. Now, the power has been put in state governments' hands to drive the electricity sector within their own states, but that's not the end of it. Most states still haven't figured out what to do. Kudos to the Enugu state government; they got it done. They were the first to get autonomy with their power board. Then Ekiti is following behind them. Ondo is right behind them. Lagos has been doing many great things in the power sector, and that's how they grew companies like Viaton over the years. You know, private company. So kudos to the government for making changes to this act. But now the act is being changed to be better. They now need to go the extra step to remove bureaucracy in getting money in the hands of private companies that are actually going to make a difference. When you put money in their hands at very reasonable rates, single-digit rates, remove some of the bureaucracy, things will start to change quickly. You know, sometimes you go to borrow money, in fact, not sometimes, all the time you go to borrow money and they ask you to bring all manner of securities that companies sometimes can't meet. So you're not able to build companies, you're not able to build this infrastructure that we so sorely need. And what happens? We still have grid collapses. We still continue to talk about 4,000 megawatts every year. We still continue to talk about the TCM being able to wield 7,000 megawatts, even though they can't. We still continue to talk about discos that are groaning and are not able to deliver power. And you're still going to have people like yourself who are spending 40% of their salary or more just to buy electricity. But one thing that is forcing people to learn is what I said before, energy responsibility. You no longer have people that are able, that have 10 or 20 air conditioners in their homes. They leave them all on and go away because they're not paying the right tariff. Today, if the AC is on and you're not there, you turn it off. If the lights are on and you don't need them, you turn them off.
That's true.
That's great. But we need to do much more. And we can do it. That's the important thing. It can be done. It's not rocket science, but if it's rocket science, it's okay. Some of us studied were trained as rocket scientists, myself inclusive. We can do this. You just need the support to get it done.
But before I let you go, tell us a bit about Fedikore. Am I pronouncing it well? Is that how it's pronounced? And what we should expect going forward from you? I know you've done a lot in this industry, but this new baby, what's up about it? Tell us a bit about it.
Thank you. So Fedikore Limited is a company that I started some years ago, but we finally actually started activities last year. So Fedikore is what I call an energy company. It's run by a very small team of professionals, and our charter is, since we're small, we have a very almost flat management strata. We are able to do things quickly. It's very hard for you to hear that a plant was built in five weeks. That's the kind of thing that we want to do. We want to take projects in different parts of the country, not just the Southeast, but the Southwest, the South, the North, and deliver projects quickly. I still run the company. I'm the founder, I'm the MD, I'm the CEO, and I'm also running as part of the technical team that gets things done. Everyone that works in the company is a Nigerian. My plant manager is Yoruba. Some of my staff are from the North. Some of my staff are from the Southeast and South. So we look at ourselves as a Wazobia company. But we are able to do things that people say is impossible to do. When we set out to build a plant for the Enugu state government last year, some people say we can't meet the timeline. That is impossible. But we did. Raised the money in less than a month. We built the plant in 5 weeks flat. Delivered on our promise, and today we're giving steady, predictable electricity to the state government to be able to build on infrastructure that the governor promised his people. These are the kind of projects we want to do. We're getting calls from different parts of the country to come and repeat the same thing, but without having proper support, we can't do it. You have the likes of AfriInvest, I already mentioned, Ike Chioke and his team, that have been hugely supportive. I mean, without him and his team, we couldn't have done this, but they believe in the vision. They believe in the people that run the company. This is the only thing that will change this country. So I can easily go back to the US and get a job or start a business. But I believe so much in Nigeria. I can't believe that a lot of people have been disenfranchised from this home that we love and we know. The only way we can get back to the glory days of this country is by companies like ours who are committed, who are resilient, doing it. We need to play not just in the power industry, but also in the gas industry, in agriculture, and in so many other places. And it can get done. That's why we're here. So I'm in Enugu today, tomorrow I'll be in Abuja, Lagos, and so on and so forth. There's so much work to be done. And you know, in the industry, we're not competing. We're still all partners. So I talk to a lot of power companies, some in Lagos, some in other places. We're all partners. We share ideas, we share people, we share resources. So this is the only way, but it can be done. That's the important thing.
Interesting. I've been speaking to the founder, Chief Executive Officer of Fedico Limited, Dr. Chukwueloka Umeh, live from Enugu State. Thank you so much for your contributions to the program as usual. We appreciate this.
Thank you, Tolu. Have a good day.
You too. Coming up next on the show, let's now